right. Good morning, everybody. I see folks are rolling in. Thank you, Marinette. I appreciate it. Right. Good morning, Jennifer. Thank you. I saw the question in the chat from Jackie's note taker app. We do limit this to humans in our session without any AI note takers. Thank you for your understanding on that. All right, it's 10 o'clock. I think we are going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Caroline Calhoun. I am a professional learning and attendance specialist at EdAdvance. We are the Regional Education Service Center in the northwest corner. I'm here in Litchfield, Connecticut with my colleagues Jaron and Jason, who are running all back-end tech for us today. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And as always, I am also here with Kari Sullivan-Custer from CSDE, our expert on all things attendance and engagement. Jay Brown can't be with us today from the Bureau of Special Education, but he sends his best to everybody. He is at another community of practice, double booked this morning. I'm also very excited to have with us colleagues from EastCon and the ACT Magnet School, Dr. Ravit Stein. We have Sarah Mallory, principal, and Kelly Carchidi, family and community liaison. They will be sharing all sorts of wonderful information with you today about Tier 2 strategies, so we look forward to hearing their content. So as we get rolling here, we'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, share what your role is, and also maybe a little something you're hoping to learn today about Tier 2 interventions from Dr. Stein and her team. So thank you, as always, to everybody for being here, and we are going to go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Jaron. So we wanted to kick it off this morning with a really interesting article that was published on November 10th. And the title of this was "The Compounding Effect of Chronic Absenteeism in Elementary Schools." And I wanted to highlight this for you because I think it's just additional research that really confirms what we already know. But the highlight of this article is that absenteeism is a dysfunction at the organizational level, and that it has consequences not just for those individual students who are chronically absent, but also for other students in the building. So the research team that published this, they reported on their study of K-3 student absences in over 100 elementary schools in Delaware. And they found that chronic absenteeism was clustered in certain schools, and that in those schools, there was this surprising phenomenon that not only was there a negative effect on the students who missed a lot of school, but there was also a much larger effect on the whole school, and more than 20 times the impact of absences on individual students for that entire school. So they concluded that organizations with a high level of absenteeism have substantial additional difficulty facilitating student learning, and that organization-wide absenteeism really ends up hurting every student in the school. We've talked about this as the ripple effect of chronic absenteeism, is how Attendance Works defines this and explains it. But this research really undergirds that finding about how it impacts the larger building community and all of the students. So we've linked here for you that original article, the researchers' contact information, and it is an interesting read if you are so inclined. Next slide, please, Jaron. Another resource we wanted to share with you today that came out in Education Week last month is an article entitled "A Guide to Building a School Calendar That Maximizes Attendance." And I love this because it's a very concrete way to tackle this complex problem of chronic absenteeism. So this article just goes in depth of about 6 tips, I think, to design your calendar with attendance in mind. We know that when districts do this, they see positive results. Dr. Gary Highsmith, who is the superintendent in Hamden Public Schools, did a wonderful job of aligning their calendar around being really mindful of attendance, and they reaped the rewards of that. So as district leaders are continuously confronting these persistently high levels of absenteeism, the more thought we can put into planning our school calendars strategically can really have a great impact on attendance. So we're minimizing those dips. So feel free to take a look at that article. Next slide, please. This month, as many of you may know, is National Family Engagement Month. So I've pulled some excellent resources from the National Association of Family, School, and Community Engagement, or NAFCE, and they have linked some wonderful resources there, kits and tools from a variety of their partners. So if you're so inclined, go ahead and dig into that, and you will find a lot of resources that you can highlight in your community this month. Next slide, please. NAFCE also has a webinar coming up tomorrow, November 19th. It's at 1 o'clock, and it is providing an overview on the importance of advocacy, all sorts of different ways that we as educators can advocate, updates on current policy issues, next steps that folks can take to advocate at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. And really just how all of the essential work that you are doing to support our children and families, our schools and communities, how you can advance that work and create conditions successful for advocacy and reducing those barriers for successful and effective family and community engagement. So we encourage you to sign up for that if you're able to join, and it will surely share some really excellent expertise in that arena. Next slide, please. The last piece I think I have in here for you from NAFCE is a list of resources of how we can support our families and immigrant communities. We know that right now the current landscape has some real challenges when it comes to our families who might be immigrants and how the federal policies are currently affecting them. So when NAFCE held their National Assembly in early October, they heard a lot about issues surrounding immigration and how that was negatively impacting the field of education, including an increase in student absenteeism. So they saw that there was a reduced participation in family events and a whole host of sort of a ripple effect of this current landscape. So NAFCE shared, as a result of this, a variety of resources from different states around the country and how they are working to support families and immigrant communities. So please dig into those resources as you look for ways to support those families here in Connecticut. Next slide, please. We know that as we head into these winter months and into the holiday season with Thanksgiving break coming up next week, that it's important that we maintain regular communication with our families. Attendance Works has a great updated letter for Thanksgiving break. They also have a winter holiday letter that you can pull and adapt as needed to make it resonate for your particular community. There are a variety of resources from Edutopia linked there as well, and from Schoolhouse Connection. So please dig into those to help you prepare for these upcoming holiday breaks as you work with your families. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to turn it to Kari to talk about the data.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many familiar names and faces here with us today. I'm going to start with data. This is our first sneak peek at not chronic absence, but attendance data for this school year. And I wanted to share it with you. Performance Office recently, just last week, posted daily attendance rates for the month of September. Those daily attendance rates are the number of students or percentage of students who are in school on a daily basis during that month. We don't release chronic absence until October, so we don't have the October chronic absence data yet, but we will have it shortly. But I wanted to share with you some good news around daily attendance trends for the month of September over the last several years. You'll see, starting on the left, you'll see I think it's cutting off some of the data there. Let's see if I can lift that up. So you'll see all the way to the right here is last school year is the green, going backwards over the last 6 years, and you'll see we've incrementally been increasing our average daily attendance for the month of September across all students. High need students, you see a pretty large growth in high need students, LS and multilingual learners, and students with disabilities. So we're happy to see we're strong. We're starting the school year strong with students, more students coming to school every day in September. We're anxious to see the October chronic absence rates, but I do know from the districts I have been out and visiting with that we have had a really strong start to the school year so far. So with that, this data is available on EdSite Public, the attendance dashboard, and also where the monthly attendance is, and also on EdSite Secure for those who have passwords for EdSite Secure. Next slide, please. So I wanted to cover every once in a while or on Talk Tuesdays some of our policies and legal requirements and structures around attendance in Connecticut that sets us apart from other states. And one of these is that in Connecticut, we districts are required to have district and school attendance teams. This is based on statute 10-198C, and this was passed back, I believe, in 2015, that an attendance review team must be established if their district has a chronic absence rate of over 10%, then there must be a district attendance team. Or if any school has a chronic absence rate of 15% or higher, that school is required to have a school attendance team. If a district is less than 10%, but still has, these are very few districts, one or more schools at over 15, they're still required to have either a district team or separate teams at each school. I remind you of this, there is a survey coming out to all districts in the near future, asking them about their district and attendance and school attendance review teams. They're to meet monthly to review truant and chronically absent students, identify barriers, and coordinate supportive school and community interventions. There's guidance around teams in the Reducing Chronic Absence Prevention Intervention Guide, but I will say that we have found that districts that have effective teams that are committed with an all hands on deck. I've been familiar at the table with some districts like New Haven who has seen decreases in their chronic absence over the last several years. So just wanted to share that with you. If you wanted the statute again, it's 10-198C. So if you have these chronic absence rate, about 70% of our districts are required to have a district attendance team. So just wanted to share that with you guys, just put that back in front of everyone, and that survey will be going out in the next week or two. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Caroline.
Thank you, Kari. As always, we want to remind you that our LEAP Home Visit Hub trainings for that 101 training for all home visitors is open and free. Everybody is welcome, whether you are a LEAP district or not. The 101 trainings are 2 hours. They take place monthly, and the next session is coming up on December 10th. So we've linked the online registration form for you there. So you can join Nushette Blackburk and her wonderful team of coaches to learn more about how to home visit in the LEAP model and philosophy. Next slide, please. As always, we are highlighting for you some of the most important Connecticut resources there for you, things from Bright Spots to the School is Better With You campaign, the EdSite data portal, and a variety of other policies and procedures. So take a look at those as needed. With that, let's go to our next slide, and I am very happy to introduce to you our team of presenters this morning. We have Dr. Ravit Stein joining us from EastCon Regional Education Service Center. Ravit is a PhD, BCBAD, LBA, NCSP. How's that, Ravit?
Too many letters.
That's a lot of letters. So Ravit is joining us in her role as the director at EastCon's Access program, which is the Advancing Consultation and Coaching to Empower Student Success team. And Dr. Stein contributes to the field by publishing a whole variety of research. She presents at regional and national conferences. She translates evidence into practical tools for those of us on the ground that really supports that real world application. And she is a licensed psychologist. She's a nationally certified school psychologist, and she also teaches graduate courses at UConn School of Education. So we are really happy to have you here with us this morning. And I'd also love to go to the next slide and introduce Ravit's colleagues who are joining us today from, I don't know if you all call it the ACT Magnet High School or the ACT Magnet High School. We have Sarah Mallory here, who is the principal at this magnet school. And Sarah started teaching there in the fall of 2008, first as the PE and health teacher, also the ballet and hip hop teacher. I love that. And in 2013, Sarah took on an administrative position as the Dean of Students, and then later became the principal. So I know Sarah mentioned that she feels like she's found her forever home at this high school, and that is like a wonderful fit place where she can share her passion for the arts with her students. So welcome, Sarah. And last but not least, next slide, please. We have Kelly Carchidi here with us today. Kelly is a family and community liaison at this same magnet school. She's been there since September of 2023. But Kelly has over a decade of experience supporting families and youth, and Kelly's background includes working with children and teens facing mental health challenges, adults with acquired brain injuries, and families in early childhood education programs. So we are so grateful to all three of you for taking time to come share your expertise with our audience this morning. And we will go ahead and pass screen sharing to you, Ravit, so you all can get started.
Thank you so much. Let's see if we can make that as seamless as possible. Look at that. Is that looking okay for all of you, Caroline?
It is perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
awesome. So thank you so much for having us here. We're so thrilled to be able to share a little bit about what's happening at ACT, as well as more broadly how our Access team at EastConn is working with school districts in our area to support looking at attendance at all tiers, and in particular, our colleagues that are working around what can schools do at tier 2. You're already doing so much. I know that because of so many of the wonderful Talk Tuesday presentations that I've had the opportunity to attend, and hoping that we can help continue to strengthen your toolbox in this area, given just the scope and the nature of this. I love that article, Caroline, that you shared, this organizational issue. So of all the different titles that you named that I have, I was like, what about mom? I'm a mom. And so I feel like being a parent of middle schoolers, high schoolers that are navigating all of these attendance issues is also, many of you out there also probably seeing this all from the parent perspective and in your own communities. So I just appreciate this focus and continued focus on thinking about how we engage with our community and with our school as an organization to support attendance, and think about it about how we can do it as a community. So I wanted to start out by just orienting you to this slide, and I'm going to put into the chat this resource that you can access. I have a few different slides, so I might actually just toggle between them instead of in slideshow mode to just show you. This slide right here is our RESC Alliance resources for multi-tiered approach to student attendance was actually built back in 2018 before the pandemic, and has been a lot of information added to it over the years. My colleague, Dr. Erin Dunn, has done a ton of work on this website and is always adding tier 2 resources. So I'm going to be linking back to this. So Caroline, let me know if it's too tricky for us to kind of toggle between the deck and the information I'm going to share through that website. But this is that website that I'm going to talk about, and then wanted to really think about asking you all about how the science of behavior really connects back to attendance, and recognizing that attendance is a part of the community, and the questions that you may ask yourself about behavior and attendance relate to really thinking about that why. So what I'm going to do is talk just a little bit about how attendance connects back to what we call function of behavior or motivation, and then talk about how we can really dig into those behavioral intentions in our tier 2 processes, and then turn it over to my colleagues at ACT to talk about the multi-tier different ways that they've thought about this. In particular, when we think about the why behind attendance then, and we think about it from a function-based perspective, it allows us to consider the frequency of reinforcement, the kind of reinforcement we offer. If we recognize that, when I was a younger mother, and somebody said to me, "What would you want?" A Dunkin' gift card meant way less to me than like a free hour of babysitting, because I needed to escape the toddler days, and that was a reinforcer that was much more motivating for me in that moment. Today, I definitely would take the Target or the Dunkin' gift card. So understanding how reinforcement and different reinforcers can really align with what students' motivations are for coming to school is helpful, and I'll share some tools that we use to match that reinforcement, and then talk about those incentives in alignment with those motivations. How the ACT colleagues will talk a lot about this, but how self-monitoring, which is a behavioral intervention, can really be used to support our teens and even our middle schoolers in looking at their own attendance. There's some really interesting initiatives that ACT is doing around self-monitoring and attendance. And then finally, thinking about coping planning. Coping planning is a term that we use to describe sort of getting ahead of something that might be a risk factor. And so I'm going to share some routine checklists that we use that help with coping planning to think about areas where an issue might arise that we might be able to use coping planning. So just to give a brief overview of function of school behavior, and I'm going to click again back to our attendance website. On the main site that I've shared, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a variety of additional resources, and many of them come from Chris Kearney, who's a colleague who we've had a chance to talk to over the years several times, but is someone who really thinks about attendance
an
in a
academic
way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a
You good? All right. So Chris Kearney thinks about attendance from the perspective of function. And when we think about attendance from the perspective of function, and we understand that when we frame attendance from understanding that some students don't come to school because of somatic complaints, sadness, anxiety, and those are avoidance behaviors, versus other kids don't attend based on issues related to tangible reinforcers, which is more of an access focus. They are looking for video games. They may have colleagues or friends in their community that aren't attending school, and that's motivating to them to access those people. You can see that school refusal isn't just in one bucket. 33% of students are not attending because of this function, versus 35% of students may not be attending due to a different function. So when we think about attendance, if we can actually start to think about the buckets through which students do or don't come to school, we can match our interventions more to those functions. We're going to talk a little bit about a few different tiered supports that we have on our website that you can access and take all the materials, everything's free, and kind of walk through them based on different tier 2 interventions and functions. When I shared this information back in the spring with some of our LEAP coordinators that had been trained in Check and Connect, you'll see that there's a lot of connection back to that philosophy in our work. So I'm going to talk about the daily mission card and the link mentoring program, and then jump into a few different other reinforcers. I know I'm talking a lot, so I just want to share a few things with you on the website so that you can click around on them later. When you go to the Tier 2 section of the attendance website, by clicking over here and looking at here, they will show you Tier 2. That will bring you to the page that has Tier 2, that has lots of different interventions that are Tier 2 interventions. I'm going to focus for a moment on the daily mission card because I wanted to kind of come back to that self-monitoring idea. that Sarah and Kelly will talk about a little bit later, which is just the idea that when we self-monitor our own attendance, it can help us think about how to improve it and how they've been doing that in their school. But this is particularly like a framework that looks like that looks a little bit like check-in, check-out, which is a tier 2 intervention that some schools use, but applies it specifically to attendance. So you can see by clicking on these different buttons that there'll be a summary of that. There's a quick guide that gives you lots of information about how to implement the intervention. There's even specific scripts that you or counselors in your school can use. So all the parts of the intervention that can help you implement a version of what we call check and connect, or like a check-in, check-out mission card is available right here to even download things like the card itself or the tracker. This is a different ways that kids can track, and the progress monitoring around that self-monitoring idea that allows students to actually visually and in a sort of low-tech way when they come in, track their own attendance. That's one intervention that I'm mentioning. I'm jumping through these quickly because I really want to lean into some of the reinforcers I talked about. But the Link mentoring program is the other intervention that is on that site. It's a strategy that's really effective for students who are motivated, again, by connection and attention, and comes from that check and connect literature. And so there's lots of different parts of that program as well in the site. Talks through, again, a summary, different checklists that you, the counselor or someone from that is identified as a connecting person in the school for the student would follow, and has literally everything the person would do to run the meeting. So we know that sometimes when we think about interventions, we don't have necessarily enough information to actually implement. We want to make sure that that is just all spelled out very clearly. So there's lots of different parts of that. I just want to highlight one part of that mentoring program. When I talked about coping planning, that idea that we do what we can do ahead of time to get ahead of potential concerns. In this program or this intervention, we work with students to think about what are parts of the evening routine where things can go awry, that if they were in place would likely lead to better evening routines and potentially higher attendance rates. So we have seen this particular routine checklist that we built out that I will share in the chat. With you all, because we've seen this checklist used anywhere from tier 2 interventions to the 9th grade advisory for all 9th graders. We've even used it in middle schools, related to some SEL curriculums when different educators were thinking about how to support students in building good routines at home. And so what happens is the students actually consider, from a self-assessment perspective, what are some of the routines that are going well for them and what are some that aren't, and what ones would they prioritize if they were going to think about one routine in their lives that they might consider improving. What would that look like? So those are just small parts of the different tier 2 interventions. As I mentioned earlier, there's a few other ones that we share. This is a work completion intervention related to attendance that Dr. Dunn has a little video that you could watch on. We've also worked in the tier 2 area around students with asthma and how health and chronic issues can impact attendance. So have worked towards the development of an asthma action plan that's connected to attendance. So those are just some of those tier 2 interventions that you can assess. But where I really wanted to focus on before I pass the baton over to my colleagues is the idea of going back to function, how preference assessments are at times an underutilized tool at tier 2. Preference assessments are a way in which we can more regularly kind of understand what students might find helpful or reinforcing for them. So when we look at different preference assessments that are opportunities, I'm going to go back to the slide because it'll be easier for everyone to see that way. Sorry about that. Preference assessments, again, this link will take you to a variety of surveys, but preference assessments just remind us that different students value different things, just like we as adults value different reinforcers at different times in our lives. And using what we call forced choice reinforcement, where you could say, would you rather this or that, over time can help us understand what students benefit from and what they would like. We've built out a automated forced choice reinforcement assessment that you can do in real time with students, and ask them those questions so that you can find out which of the different functions they may be most interested in working for or earning. And so I'm going to show you how that is utilized in a moment, but this is an Excel or Google Sheets that you just work from directly and gives you the score automatically. So you choose which potential reinforcers you'd want to have people choose between, and then it enters them into the spreadsheet for you based on what you chose, and then records the choices as you administer, and then gives you the score. And I'm going to just show that to you how that looks right in the moment. So here are different examples of what you could choose. So let's say with a younger student, we would have like have lunch with an adult of your choice. That is an attention or connection seeking reinforcer. So that would be choice 1. And then the second choice they might choose would be an office messenger. So those are the 2 choices that they're choosing between. And then they pick from this list the 2 choices they might choose between here, the 2 choices they might choose between in terms of independent rewards, and the 2 choices that they care about the most from like getting out of things. And then you literally just click administer the survey. That would bring you to this tab. The students then are asked the questions. Would you rather, we know students love would you rather questions. Would you rather have lunch with an adult or receive a shout out? Would you rather have your favorite snack or be allowed? It takes about 5 minutes to implement. And then automatically, as you enter the X marks, the results come up automatically for you. And you can see this student was most reinforced by independent activities. And so we're able to understand that independent activities are most helpful for that student. We've also shared this group of SMART rewards that help you look at those activities. So if we said that students were most interested in, for example, adult connection, then it will, oops, not updating right now, but you can look at how each of the different rewards by grade level and by function is connected to those things. So those are all available to you. But we really encourage you to think about how you might use preference assessments, either online or the ones that were shared here. There's some high school ones that are just kind of lower tech, where they answer the questions here and then they score themselves here, which can be interesting for students to do. Here's some high school reinforcement surveys. There's lots of different versions that we've shared that are sort of paper pencil or online that you could use. But my takeaway to you is that using reinforcement assessment surveys in tier 2 and even at tier 1 can be a really helpful way to support students in thinking about, from a behavioral perspective, the purpose, the function, or the motivation behind both the attendance as well as what would be reinforcing for them. So before I pass it over to my colleagues, just wanted to take a moment in the chat and hear from all of you. What are some of the barriers or facilitators that help you develop tier 2 initiatives in your districts? What makes it hard? What makes it easy? Um, I'll leave that space in the chat for a moment for people to type in so that we can have a conversation about when you're implementing school-based tier 2 initiatives, what are some of the facilitators or barriers to doing so? Sometimes it has to do with the training of the people that would be developing those initiatives. Sometimes we have counselors that are checking in with students, but not necessarily running a specific intervention. So those are some things that I've seen in schools that make it trickier to do tier 2 for those students we've identified as at risk. I'll keep an eye on that chat. Oh, I see some things coming in. Lack of parent response. That's right. Personnel, who's managing it, the mindset, inviting them for a meeting, parent pushback. Time in the day to utilize interventions. Absolutely. Those are real actual barriers that I want to honor. It can be really hard to engage families in these conversations. We have found that some of those home routine checklists, doing them with students and then having parents get involved in that way can be sort of a very tiny habit that can help. But I do hear you all that parent involvement piece. I'm excited for our ACT colleagues to talk about that a little bit because they've talked about how they've leveraged the motivation of students even when they don't have that parent follow through to think about how that student builds that agency and within themselves in that conversation. I'll keep looking at that chat while I pass the mic over to my ACT colleagues, but I will also put my email right into the chat. In particular, if anyone is interested in having a further conversation about any of those tier 2 interventions, we've tried, Dr. Dunn really tried to build them out like step by step so that the implementation doesn't require anything but literally reading the paper and then being able to implement the meeting frameworks around those tier 2 interventions, but we hope that they can be helpful and we can answer any questions that you may have about those. All right, so I'll keep the slide deck up and pass it over to Sarah, who can jump us off. And then Sarah, just if you don't mind just saying slide, then I'll know to move to the next one.
Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. Super excited to be here. Ravit's team has been working with our school for several years now. So a lot of what we do has been in collaboration with Arian Dunn or members of the EastCon team. So just a huge shout out to them and the work that they do. They do try to make it as easy for us as possible to implement these different strategies. But the other thing I'm going to just say is like time, it's crazy. I'm the sole administrator of a building, so I totally get that. And sometimes we just have to do the best we can, right? So any type of intervention is going to be better than nothing. So that's kind of my motto. So I'm Sarah Mallory. I'm the principal of ACT, and Kelly Carchidi is with me too. So she'll speak in a minute, but we are a performing arts school in Willimantic. Something that makes us unique is that we pull from over 40 towns and we're only 130 students. So you know, it's hard to work with local resources because we have so many different communities to work with. So again, we do the best we can, but we're pretty diverse in where our students come from, socioeconomic class, and some racial diversity as well. And slide, thank you. So as most of us have experienced, our chronic absenteeism rate went through the roof during and following the pandemic. So our numbers are still super high, and the work that we've done is not done yet. But if you see in 2021 or 21-22, we were at 59.7% chronic absenteeism, and last year we were at 34. So we've cut that down pretty significantly. So that's, you know, due to the work that we've done. You know, we talk about motivation and behavior. Our students come to our school because they want to be there. And that's something that's kind of always been in place for us. But now we're seeing, you know, just because we have the arts, something that's a motivating factor for them, that doesn't always get them to school. So we have all of these programs, we have all this recognition in place for our students, we celebrate them over the top. But if we go to the next slide, we still are struggling with that. So we've done a lot of thinking about our school climate survey, you know, the students are reporting off the chart, feeling safe at school, feel like they belong at school, feel like teachers treat them fairly, and they feel successful at school. But we're still seeing the chronic absenteeism rate where it is. So this has led to a lot of questions for us. And my mantra for us and our team is physically present, mentally engaged. So how do we get kids physically here and mentally engaged in the work that we're doing all day, every day? And so that's where I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Hey everyone. So last year we conducted a survey where we went into our advisories for each grade level. And in the survey, the data just included last year's freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. We did a little bit of a different approach of our seniors, which we'll talk about later. And we were asking them why they were out. So the results that came back to us to help us understand where we needed to be was that a lot of them were saying they had medical reasons to be out, appointments, were sick. Because a lot of our students are from over a half an hour away from the school, going to an appointment and then getting to school is not always feasible for them. So if they have an appointment midday, early morning, late afternoon, a lot of times they're not in the building. There was also a lot of mental health that was involved. If you want to go into the next slide. Some stated other, like they were going to work, they were physically exhausted. Transportation is a big one that we are constantly working with our families and students, because families, if they miss the transfer bus in their town, the regional bus stop, they're often not able to get out to Willimantic to our school. So a lot of students have a hard time maybe getting to that regional bus stop, or again, if they miss it just by a few minutes in the morning, they're not able to get into the building that day. So then we have members of our ACT attendance team. So we meet on a monthly basis with the Access team, and involved in it is Principal Sarah, our social worker, the school guidance counselor. Our school nurse sits in on it as well, and she works and gives updates on the students who have medical challenges, or we're seeing a lot of chronic absenteeism from certain students. I'm in it as well as a family school liaison, and then our admin assistant who helps with data entry and also is really great at helping us look for patterns or knowing when kids are coming in, if they're coming in late, or just seeing what they look like when they get here as well. So I'm gonna briefly go through the tier 1 supports before we dig into tier 2. The advisory attendance check-in is the script that we had used when we went into the advisories last year to check and see why kids were out. We had them start with what our motto at school is: respect yourself, respect the work, and respect the community. So we had them dig deeper and look at what happens when you're absent from school in those 3 categories. We then had them go into their power schools, and first off, we were able to help students get into their power school if they've never done it. But then second off, we were able to help show them where to check for their attendance, how to check for their grades, so that we were able to dive deeper. They then created an attendance goal for themselves. For some students, they were absent 1 or 2 days. The attendance goal was not anything significant, but it also gave us a source of data for their students who were absent a little bit on the heavier side. And so we completed that, and then we have them for this year to review of students and do a check-in and get with them. So we're going to revisit those advisories, introduce with the freshman class, and go back through it. Other tier 1 supports that we have is monthly incentives, where students are being, if you're absent 2 or less days per month, you're pulled for a gift card that we're able to purchase. We have a Pathway President's Cup, which is all of the arts pathways compete for who can be here the most. And so it's done just by whatever your pathway is. Juniors and seniors can also do internships, and for all grade levels, the performance participation. If they're not in school, they're not eligible for these things. A lot of our students are at the school because they want to perform, so it encourages them to be present. We offer a donut party towards the end of first semester for students who are not chronically absent. And then our nurse calls home to all families on a daily basis if we have not heard from them and why they are absent. And then at the beginning of the school year, we also send out, as part of our back to school communication, talking about attendance and discuss it in depth at our new student orientation. Nurse Casey and myself also send out a at least quarterly wellness wire where we're including attendance information for families as well. And then we have a district attendance policy that we follow as well, where at 5 absences, students are receiving or families are receiving a communication home from us, just letting them know they're at 5 absences. Once they are at 10, we can no longer accept parents to excuse that absence. At 10, we are requesting a parent meeting, whether it's virtual, by phone, or in person. And at 15 absences, students are at risk of losing credit. So the absence letter is part of our tier 2 supports. And at that point, when a student is at over 5 absences, we're looking at assigning them a case manager. And we do that based on relationship with the child, and or if they have a 504 IEP, a lot of the times our counselor or social worker will meet with the students about attendance who they are already meeting with on a regular basis. Sometimes those relationships are switched to somebody else because a student has a stronger connection with somebody. So it's really about connection. We also start creating attendance plans with students when they're over 5 absences. And this is really where we form that connection with students and dive deeper into what their attendance looks like. We go over how many days they've been out. We look at the reasons for it. So we see, are they out for a lot of Fridays or Mondays? Is it 1 day per week? Is it multiple absences? Have they missed for a really long time? Or are they missing because it's medical, in which case we want to have conversations with the nurse, with their family, making sure that they're receiving the right support at home and through their mental or physical health as well. So the attendance plan then serves as a guide for us to check back in with students. We'll say, hey, how often do you want to check in? What is our goal? Sometimes we're sitting and meeting and having short-term check-ins and saying, hey, how are you? What's going on? Or it's a little bit longer where we're saying, come hang out outside of class. We'll pull you for a little bit longer and have conversations to be able to plan how they can get to school more often. And again, that might look like then some work on our end. Do they need an alarm clock? Do we need to talk about their sleep schedule? What about the parents? Are they having a hard time getting to the bus stop? And that's transportation piece. And so how can we support the parents? We had one student who was in Willimantic who was a walker, but had asthma and was unable in the cold weather to walk to and from school. So she was frequently missing school. We were able to talk to the sending district. They decided they were able to put her on the bus, and her attendance since then has drastically improved. She won one of our attendance, most improved attendance awards 2 years ago, and is continuing to do really well. She's no longer chronically absent. And then the last part of our tier 2 support is that students, I offer to meet with them over the summer, especially any incoming student. If they have had attendance challenges in middle school or in their previous high school, I will reach out to them and see if we can set up a visit over the summer where they're either letting me out into their home, or meeting in the community, or we are meeting at the school. And we're just starting to talk about what supports they need to be in school, what challenges they have had, and how we might be able to do things differently at ACT. Oh, and then I'm always constantly texting with families about absences. Families will check in and say, hey, they're not coming in today, or, they're getting in, but this is what our struggle is. So it's a constant communication. And sometimes the text with my work phone is a little bit easier for families to reach out and say they're struggling than a phone call or an email.
So I just want to point out, any of the blue in the slides is a hyperlink to the resource that we use. So we don't have time to open all of those links for you, but all of those links are available. So the action plan that Kelly was talking about is with the student directly. Parents are aware that that meeting's happening, but they're not always involved in that meeting. So students are creating the goals, students are identifying their needs, students are monitoring their own absences and the check-ins. They're determining what percent daily attendance is their goal, and they're monitoring that on their own. So I just want to point that out. At the high school level, the students are owning that for us. So some of our parents are super involved and some of them are not, but the ownership lies on the student for those instances. I see a question in the chat about the credit denial. So our policy that we have just adopted is 15 absences, they have to appeal. So if they are in good academic standing and they have, reasons for their absences, they appeal and then the credit is awarded. If they are not in good academic standing, they're not eligible to appeal. And then we have credit recovery options for them. So this is new in place for us this year. During the pandemic, I think a lot of schools, went to, if they're passing, they get the credit. If they're not, and they don't, and the absences don't matter. But we were finding that wasn't working for us in a performing arts-based setting, because being here and participating in the class activities is a huge part of how they demonstrate their learning here. So that's what we chose to do. Tier 3 supports, so that's 10 or more absences. We're requesting a meeting. During that meeting, we're talking about that homeroom routine checklist that Ravit had showed you earlier. So we're talking through that with families. We're seeing what supports we might be missing. We're putting those into place. In some cases, we've looked at alternative schedules for students, early in, late out, things like that, to accommodate them if we need to. I have the credit appeal form linked. Again, this is brand new for us, so we'll just be going through that appeal process in January for the first time, and I'm happy to share how that goes. But something that we're trying this year, and it seems to be working because a lot of our students are motivated by academic performance. They want to do well, they want to make sure they get their credits. So in the cases that we've had the 10 absence meetings, many of them are like, oh, I can't hit 15. I need to make sure I get the credit. And that's something that's important to them. So if you know your students and figure out what's going to motivate them, for some of them, that's going to work for them. We do have the home visit guide in there. Just, obviously safety is always important. So Kelly, whenever is going out, typically we go in teams or things like that, or we'll, again, encourage parents to get here to the school if possible. Failed attempt. So again, we have tried a lot of things that haven't worked, to be honest. And attendance is something that has been super important to me as a school leader for many years. And it's something that I value and spend a lot of time and thought thinking about because of the nature of what we're hands-on, project-based, performance-based learning. So we have tried things that haven't worked. So last year we got this brilliant idea in attendance team that we were going to put together this big raffle. We had 15 different buckets, and all students had to do was show up and they would get a raffle ticket, and then they could put their ticket in an option of their choice. The prizes ranged from Dunkin' Donuts to principal for a day, security for a day, ACT apparel, so hoodies or sweatshirts, things like that. The kids really didn't buy into it, and it's because looking back on that, we picked the prizes. We should have let the kids pick the prizes, but we were like, yeah, this is great. When you get brainstorming as adults, you're like, this is going to be great. So by the end, I think we were getting 20 kids a day that would put their raffle ticket in, and I would walk around during lunch and be like, did you get your ticket? No, I don't care. I'm not doing it. That was the majority of the response. So that didn't work. And the reason why was exactly what Ravit was saying early. The kids they didn't buy into it, and they weren't motivated by the prizes available. A couple of the kids, we asked them what they wanted. They wanted a trip to Dunkin' Donuts. We had them set their goal. If you are here, if you don't miss 2 days for the next 2 weeks, you get Dunkin'. And then they missed the 2 days and they're like, oh, whatever, I'll just go to Dunkin' with my parents. So again, the motivating factor just wasn't there for them. So the seniors last year, we noticed a trend with them. They were our highest chronically percent. They were the highest chronically absent. They really wanted this senior party. They came to us and were like, hey, we want this senior party. We want a 3-hour senior party where we can have ice cream, dance party, just hang out outside, just seniors. And we're like, okay, so you're not coming to school. We have to figure out a way to earn this. And the goal was to get the group percentage over 90% daily attendance for, I think it was 1 month. And they were just, they couldn't buy into that, even though it was initiated by them. It wasn't enough for them. So that didn't work for us either.
Sarah, if you don't mind if I jump in, I just appreciated as we were preparing for this presentation, just Sarah being vulnerable and naming, because there are so many failed attempts in schools and so much good initiatives and things that we think might work. So naming when initiatives don't work and thinking about those lessons learned is one of the most important things we can do. And just to highlight again, from a behavioral perspective, that motivation, self-choice. And then when we know that reinforcement is so based on immediacy, and I just use a very simple example of like all of us really are in it in education because we love teaching and being helping professionals. And yet we do get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And if we only got that paycheck once a year, I'm not sure how many of us would stay in it all year if we only got our paycheck like 1 time a year or 2 times a year. And so remembering that these reinforcers that we're working on with students and the immediacy of them is probably, we need to cut that in half and then in half and then in half again. So even the end of a month might be too long. And that's why so many of these new initiatives, and I know some of the ones that Caroline and Kari have talked about, are like really highlighting being present and naming it at the end of a day, at the end of a week, sooner, so that immediacy of reinforcement comes back. Because that's just a very basic behavioral principle, that immediacy of reinforcement impacts future behavior. So I encourage you to think about that. And that's why I'm so thrilled that Sarah shared these examples of lessons learned. So a few takeaways, Sarah, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah. So this is Kelly. So, one thing that I just want to say is like, you're not always going to see the outcome in the percent chronically absent. Like that rate might not change, but Kelly has some good takeaways in terms of what things that have changed, even though the student might still be chronically absent.
So I started working with one student who was a freshman in the 23-24 school year, and you can see their data between their freshman year and their sophomore year. Their absences jumped from 57 to 79%. And it's kind of looking at it like, where have we gone wrong? What do we need? And it's just been a lot of connection building. The student towards the end of last year started asking to come see me. They started advocating for themselves a little bit more. To date today, and I just looked, they're at 15 total absences, which has them out about 28% of the time. But last year on the same date, they were already at 20 absences, which had them out 38%. So it was a 10% increase from doing better this year to last year. But if you go to the next slide, Ravi, this year I'm so proud of them, because even though they're at 15 absences already, and they're on track to still be chronically absent, they are advocating for themselves and asking for their own work extensions. Whereas last year we did a lot of work of emailing the teachers together. What do I say? Are they going to say no? There is that fear of rejection. Their parent is now communicating to us when they are absent most of the time. So it is not us wondering what's going on, because students are going to get sick. They're going to be out. And that's a big message I tell all the kids I work with. Is like, we know you're going to be absent. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for you to be here as much as you can. So the parent is now communicating with us. The student, we implemented some strategies last year about using some post-it notes on their desk when they had an extra question, so they didn't have to talk in front of the class. They asked if we could implement that into their classes again this year and send an email to teachers letting them know that this worked in the past. And they're doing the hard things this year. They're doing large group presentations. They're asking about their GPA instead of being absent on those days. And they're caring about their grades, and they're proactively thinking about their future. So even though they're going to be chronically absent more than likely again this year, as we're heading into the wonderful winter and cold and flu season, their attendance is significantly better than what it was in the past. And we're extremely proud of them and the progress that they've made.
I'll hand it back to you, Caroline or Kari, to close us out. We're so grateful for the opportunity to share all the lessons learned and successes and celebrations at ACT, and appreciate you all sharing, Sarah and Kelly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ravit. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kelly. I think so many of the resources and anecdotes you all shared are really applicable to the work everybody is doing on the ground. So we appreciate those concrete examples and takeaways and tools to help improve everybody's practice across the state and learn from one another. We so appreciate it. I know that your contact information was on one of those last slides you shared. So folks who are here participating today, feel free to reach out to Sarah, Kelly, Ravit for further information about any of those strategies, interventions that you heard about that might have piqued your interest. And again, thank you so much. For next Talk Tuesday, we are going to be gathering on December 2nd for a discussion around social, emotional, intellectual K-12 habits. That's the SEI habits, with colleagues from Cooperative Educational Services, CES, and also reps from the Ridgefield School District. So we hope that you will be able to join us that day. We have linked for you where all of our archived Talk Tuesday slide decks live. They also, alongside the recordings, are on the CSDE website, and we will send out today's slides to everybody who is registered for Talk Tuesday later this week. And we so appreciate everybody's participation, and huge thanks again to our presenters for sharing your expertise, and to Kari Sullivan at the state for sharing her expertise. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. Take care.